Hey guys, it's Winnie here. Looking forward to Origin tomorrow. We did the Origin preview last night. We've got the round 14 preview on Thursday night. But there's another big sporting event this week, and that is the NBA Finals tipping off. I've had a really awesome NBA season. Gave out just two division winners, and it was OKC at $7.50, the Magic at $11. They both got up in the regular season. I tipped Boston preseason $5.50. We'll see how that goes. Doubled down on them at $2.75 before the playoffs. I also had Minnesota at 11s in our playoff preview. So I wanted to share my thoughts for the finals, get some thoughts from my friends as well, and let you know what I'm liking. I've created a same series multi. I've also got a couple of tips I like, and we'll share from some others in the group what they like as well. Firstly, let's get some insight into how the market's shaping up from Tristan.
With Boston, firm favourites $1.41. Dallas, they're actually our worst way going into this competition so far. There's still a few days before the first game tips off, so I do expect a little bit to change. But Dallas is certainly our bigger liability at this stage. We actually laid them at $26.34, and then a reasonably decent bet at $18. Someone had 500 on 18, and then another 500 on at 16. So we've laid them at that sort of ugly price. They've come in obviously significantly now at $2.90 back into a two-horse race. So looking forward to the series. It should be a beauty. MVP, Kyrie Irving's our worst way. He's into $16 now. Jason Tatum obviously very, very firm at $1.87.
Okay, so let's begin with how good are the Celtics. I'm looking at this team that has been on the precipice for a number of years, has built up to this moment, and has had a historically good regular season. A lot of people are going to knock the path. If you look at what Boston had to go through in the playoffs, okay, first round, Miami with no Jimmy Butler. Second round, the Cavs and Donovan Mitchell's injured. Third round, the Pacers get there and Halliburton's out after game 2. So that's fair. And you could also go a step further and say Boston's not covering a lot of these lines convincingly either. But I do think there's a degree of just pacing themselves and doing just enough to get through. And that has also allowed them the luxury of not having to rush back Porzingis, who's had that calf strain. And people will question kind of the ceiling of Boston without the zinger, but I feel like it's quite likely that he's going to be back, he's going to play, and probably could have come back a little earlier if they'd really needed him. Then on the other side of the draw, you look at Dallas, who did have a really tough path and has proven a lot in these playoffs. Got the luck of injured Kawhi in round 1 of the playoffs against the Clippers, but then you got a full-strength OKC, had to go on the road, win that series, and then even more impressive, dismantling Minnesota. That was my tip, again on the road. This Dallas team, as Tristan talked about, what did he say, 34s, 26s, like long odds for Dallas, such a talented team to win the finals, but they started the season very slow, missed the playoffs last year. Now that's really where this journey began. You missed the playoffs last year on purpose, which allowed them to keep their draft pick, which they turned into Lively, who's actually a really important contributor. At the trade deadline, you had Washington and Gafford. Don't forget Kyrie was kind of in and out of the team earlier in the year with dealing with some injuries. He's been back more consistent. You put it all together once they're finally injury-free, and they're a deadly team led by a superstar, Luka Doncic, who's 25, like in his prime, but has been playing pro basketball since he's 16. So he's, a veteran at this point. And it's a Dallas team that you have to take very seriously. Now, if we talk about experience, I mentioned like this Boston team has been ahead of schedule for a number of years, but now they've had that many playoff runs, they're sort of behind schedule to have not actually won a championship yet. And if they don't win one this year, there's going to be real pressure and real question marks over, whether that core and the leading duo of Tatum and Brown, whether they can get them over the hump. But to me, they've played so many playoff games together. They've had that core that can only be an advantage. They got to this stage a couple of years ago. I think they were every bit as good as Golden State. I just think Steph Curry, who's a historically great player, kind of just went superhuman really at key moments in that series, took it away from Boston. But there's lessons learned out of that. You've got Drew Holiday, who actually has won a championship and is a real difference maker. They have not missed a beat since losing the Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus Smart, because they were able to trade for Holiday. White has been a revelation. There's veteran leadership there with Horford, and then Porzingis, the X factor. I wouldn't say that Boston needs to rely on Porzingis, but if he can play at full fitness, it really does take this team to an even greater level. I think a level that Dallas couldn't handle. Now, as for experience on Dallas's side, They made the conference finals a couple of years ago. This is their first trip to the finals as currently constructed. You know, Luka has won a EuroLeague, certainly a player that's not going to be overawed. And then you've got Kyrie that has actually not only won a championship, but hit one of the biggest shots, you know, in a Game 7 in NBA history. So enough experience on Dallas's side as well. The biggest difference in this series is probably the defensive backcourt of Boston. I think that's what makes them a truly elite team and makes them as equipped to handle Dallas as anybody, since Dallas's greatest threat comes from their offensive backcourt. So again, White, Drew Holiday can take on those responsibilities, but when the Celtics have got to switch, you know, you've got really capable big-bodied defenders like Tatum, like Brown as well, that will all do stints on Luka and Kyrie. Then you have to factor in home advantage. Now, I know Boston have only lost twice these playoffs. Both of those were home games. And then you've got Dallas that I think has won twice on the road in every series so far. So it's not that Dallas will be daunted, but it is still an advantage having, you know, the first two as well as Game 5 and potentially Game 7 in the Garden for Boston. The argument for Dallas is going to be the simplistic view of looking at any series, who's the best player in the series, and it's fair to say it is Luka. So then if Dallas is going to win the finals, Luka's got to outplay Tatum. Then you probably go next step and say, who's the second best player on each team? Can Kyrie outplay Jaylen Brown? Which I think they're both possibilities, but because of the way Boston's constructed, I just don't think it plays out that way, and I really do think Tatum can play as well as Luka. You're also going to point to crunch time. This Mavs team are amazing in crunch time. They just seem to always be able to get high quality looks. But I think that's also because when everything slows down in crunch time at the end of games, Luka or Kyrie are perfectly capable in isolation and they can get good shots one-on-one. For Boston, that's their danger, that if the ball gets sticky in crunch time, they become a more one-dimensional team, and you really don't want Tatum trying to settle for, you know, tough jump shots. But I still question how many of these games are going to get to crunch time. I think that Boston's deeper, better, and it can overwhelm Dallas for the main part. So that's how I see it. I've asked for some help from my friends, and I've got Brandon Grigich, who you may know shares tips all season long in the TryPod group, and he's told me his favourite play is Boston -1.5 in the game handicap, which was the same play that I liked as well. So best price about that is $2.05. So, you know, better than double up, and that means Boston would have to win in 6, 5, or 4 games. So Boston's got to win, but just it can't go 7, or your bet's lost there. And Tala as well, I got him to send me a clip, and I'll play that one for you now.
Hey, good afternoon, TryPods. It's me, T. Here's my bet for the NBA playoffs. I'm backing Jason Tatum to win the finals MVP. The way I see it and the way the market sees it is that the Boston Celtics are the heavy favourites. And to me, Jason Tatum is quite easily the best player on the team. There are other options, you know, you could look at, say, Jaylen Brown. Horford's probably a bit old. Porzingis, a little bit of a injury cloud. There are other guys that could win it, but the way I see it is the Celtics win the series, and Tatum's the best player on the Celtics. You'll find that at, you know, $1.83, $1.85, somewhere around there if you shop around. And yeah, all the best to us if we're on together. Catch you later.
And funnily enough, Tala's tip of Tatum MVP is also my other favourite tip. So the two tips that I had was going to be series handicap. Brandon's on board with me. And Tala's tip, which I think is even more confident, Tatum to win finals MVP. Now, you might point to the Eastern Conference Finals we just watched, and it was Brown that got the Larry Bird trophy. If anything, the fact that that was such a narrow vote and Brown got the upper hand in that one, I think makes it more likely that even if it's close, that Tatum is acknowledged and understood to be the best player on this team. Arguably, actually, was the best player in the East Finals. And if it's close again, I think he wins that vote. Also, don't necessarily think it will be that close. I think for Boston to win, this is Tatum's time, and I think Tatum is going to put on a show. I know that there's question marks over, you know, whether he can come up in the big moments. I think we're going to find out. So it's funny, I didn't get a great range of opinions there with Brandon and Tala. That I asked the Undertaker as well, who always has a keen eye on NBA and futures, and he's gone the other way. He is taking Luka MVP, which is a proxy for Dallas to win. So he said $3.10 sports bet the best about Luka. There's really no circumstances that he can see where Luka wouldn't be the MVP, even though Tristan did mention some people have had a bit of a go at Kyrie at, close to 20-1. If you look back at the last 15, 20, 25 years of NBA history, I can certainly think of a couple of examples. Tony Parker won Finals MVP on a team that had Tim Duncan. Iguodala won Finals MVP on a Warriors team that had Steph Curry. The best player on the best team does not exclusively win it. So it's all relative. I think you're getting significantly better odds with Boston at $1.45, bumping that up to $1.90 with Tatum, as opposed to Luka's odds are so close to the Dallas series odds. I might just play the series odds, but I really think a lot would have to go Dallas's way. I think Dallas would have to pinch every tight game. You need some superhuman games out of Kyrie and Luka. I should just clarify as well, I've obviously tipped them in the pod season preview at 550, and then I did double down in the playoffs preview and said the 275 is still a great price. Now, if you're on either of those, you don't need to play, Tatum MVP or series handicap. But if you're asking me, independently of those plays, or if you just want my individual tips for the finals, I really do think both those Boston plays are strong. I have also created a same series multi that I want to share with you guys. So let me read out all the legs I've built in. So I have built in Boston -1.5 games. I've built in Tatum Finals MVP, right? I've just explained those couples. So we've got them both in my same series multi. Then I've gone Luka most assists. Even though I think Dallas could struggle a little bit in the series, the usage for Luka, the way he plays, and the fact that even if Boston forces it out of his hands, he's going to lead the series in assists. So that was a pretty safe leg. Then an interesting one, I've gone Brown to have more points than Kyrie. Now this is a toss-up, but if Boston wins the series, then that is in Brown's favor. And I just look at both of them. I know Porzingis takes some shots away from Brown, but it also makes the overall offense more efficient, more open shots. Brown's taken 18 shots a game in the playoffs, Kyrie about 17. Brown's averaging 25 a game, Kyrie 23. So pretty similar shot profiles. It's just, to me, I think the looks are going to be cleaner for Brown, and therefore I do think he's going to outscore Kyrie. I think that the matchup there with those Boston defensive guards makes this the toughest series so far for Kyrie. So that's why I went Brown to have more points than Kyrie, and that's total points, not average. Then for another safe leg, I've got no player to have a 50-point game in the series. Now, one of the reasons I thought about this was I think the series could trend towards being shorter than other people expected. This could be a 5-game series. Less games, less chances someone goes for 50. You got Boston shares the ball around a little bit more. And you've got, of course, Luka, the biggest danger of anyone to have a 50-piece. But the way that Boston defends, if he got that hot, they would force it out of his hands. And that's a pretty safe leg, but I've put that in there to boost the odds up. And finally, Tatum to have the most rebounds of any player in the series. Now, he is about odds-on favourite to take that out. And it ties into, remember, if you've gotten to this point in the multi, Tatum has won the MVP, Boston has won the series, and I ultimately think Boston's going to force a lot more misses than Dallas does, and Tatum is going to play massive minutes and should snare the most rebounds in the series. Now, you put that all together, it's $15 odds available on TopSport. Our promo code's TryPod, as always, and you can have up to $25 on that. Obviously, get in before Friday when it all tips off. So there you have it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this little video. Let me know what you reckon and anything else you're backing. Best of luck throughout the finals. Hope you enjoy. Lego.